This is precisely why so many of them go into these professions, because the belief around people who are in these professions is that these are kind people, these are empathetic people, these are giving people, these are good people. And if you've been following me for any length of time, I tell you the most important thing to white folks is to be perceived as good. Think about how we revere teachers. Think about how we revere nurses. Think about how we come to the defense of policemen, right? So even when policemen in this country are doing the absolute worst, what is always the defense? These people are putting their life on the line for us. These people are risking their lives every day. White people live for the perception of goodness while being anything but good people. And obviously, this is not all white people, right? This is not all white people. This is not all white women nurses. This is not all white women teachers. But the majority of them go into these fields for the perception of goodness, for the perception of being kind people, for the perception of being empathetic people. But the thing that draws them to these professions is power. Power. When you think about white women, right? Because a lot of white women are teachers and a lot of white women are nurses. When you think about these two professions, specifically around white women have absolutely no power, no real power in their homes, right? And there's a belief that white women really are the Jekyll, they're pulling the strings of white men. White men use white women's tears as an excuse to enact the violence they always wanted to enact. White men use white women's tears as an excuse to enact violence they always wanted to enact. A truly non-violent white man, a white woman crying doesn't move him. He's not going to become violent simply because she's crying. If that's not the nature of who he is, if that's not his value system. So they use white women's tears just as an excuse to enact violence. But white women know that those tears will engage their men to violence because they also enjoy violence. They also enjoy the emotional violence that they inflict on people around them every day, the emotional violence that they inflict on their patients, the emotional violence that they inflict on their minority students, and sometimes poor white students. They enjoy it. They enjoy it. And when you think about these professions, you think the people in them are good people. Because for a lot of white people, the perception of being good is far more important to them than them actually having to be good people. Because when you are truly, truly engaged around the work of empathy, you as a teacher could not be married to a crooked cop. You as a good cop couldn't be married to an awful nurse or awful teacher. So not only do they go into these professions because they are driven by power, but they marry each other to consolidate said power. I imagine at the end of the night, a cop coming home to his nurse wife and telling her about how he harassed people that day, how he wrote tickets for people that day, how he beat up somebody that day, and that nurse in turn telling him about the patient she let stay in pain that day, the patient she denied pain meds to. Like there's a sickness, and I see them at the end of the day enjoying talking about the torture they have caused people that day. Sometimes black people, sometimes poor people, sometimes disabled people. They enjoy it. A lot of them go into these professions because of power, not because of empathy and compassion.